moving on from kids, but staying in the same house, let's talk about relationships under the pandemic. So I've been seeing a lot of news stories or jokes, really memes, come across social media talking about the COVID baby boom and the COVID divorce boom. You know how this impact is going to have the 24-hour with your spouses or partners or roommates or parents, siblings, all of that stuff, relationships. So let's talk about relationship impact. What do you got for me there?
Well, it's kind of, I know that there's multiple research studies going on right now looking at relationships in particular. I don't know if you guys have gotten the links to be invited to them, but I'm really excited to see that like there are people who are studying this in the pandemic right now. And I think they're hoping to turn that data around and get it to the public very quickly. And so what I was going to comment on is based on past research, but know that scientists are collecting these data right now to share that are in the pandemic context. I
Never
think that
fear,
this is
public. We are at work. We're going to get this nailed down. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. I do think that this is kind of the same song and dance we've been talking about, but I think any relationship issues that were already there are going to be exacerbated under stress. They're exacerbated under close proximity. They're exacerbated under, schedule disruption, circadian rhythm disruption. I was just talking about how children, and their caregiver, they physiologically regulate each other, right? Their sleep-wake cycles, their body temperature, their heart rate, that all, happens with mother and child or father and child. But it also happens with people that we pair bond with. So our attachment figures in adulthood are our romantic partners often. Just like that's the case with parent and child bonds, it's also the case that when we those types of bonds we transfer our attachment related needs to our romantic partners in adulthood, meaning our romantic partners are typically our primary attachment figures. And that also means that those relationships serve to physiologically co-regulate, we call it in science, each other's physiological systems. So like sleep wake cycles, even like your stress response can sometimes be mimicked. In particular, what's interesting with people who live together, they tend to mimic each other's health behaviors as well. And so I think that in the context of quarantine or social distancing, where you're going to be with your partner potentially for a long period of time, that whole like social mimicry that can also happen with health behaviors, or bad relationship, habits can kind of be serving us for better or for worse, depending on how you look at it.
I would love to hop into the health
Yeah.
behaviors bit, please. That's what I study, right? So largely alcohol use, but also physical activity and its relationship to alcohol use. And my partner is a big time exerciser. He goes to the gym multiple times a week. He goes for runs. He was playing soccer, all of these things. And I am hoping that it rubs off on me. So he and another friend and I have joined this group where we challenge each other to go on 3 runs a week. And so I think that has been good for keeping up accountability. And then on a less personal note, alcohol use amongst partners.
Yeah.
So that is another important thing. So as people are feeling this anxiety, this helplessness, they're not sure how to cope with these emotions that they haven't experienced before, they find that they don't have the resources to do so, they're more likely to turn to substances. So I very much expect that people will be using more substances over this time as they're kind of relying on those to cope. And that's especially problematic because people who drink to cope and regulate their negative emotions, whether that's anxiety, whether that's depression, whether that's just a bad mood, they tend to have the most alcohol related problems. So they're the ones who are getting into fights with their partners, they're the ones who are missing deadlines, they're the ones who are having hangovers, right? So physical symptoms, work-related symptoms, relationship symptoms, all of the above. So that's something that I'm going to be monitoring closely is how have people's drinking related habits and exercise and other health behaviors changed during this period?
Yeah, that's definitely another theme that I see is the quarantine snacks. There's been a lot of the eating related stuff,
Yeah.
people having to be less active and but still eating more. And having to cook more. I swear, in the last
Yes.
week, I feel like I've cooked like 1,000 meals. How did we eat before the quarantine? Like, where did our food come from? Because I feel like I didn't cook this much. Like, it's bizarre. It's some kind of magic trick happening.
I have a magic dishwasher. It's just always full, and I don't know where these dishes come from, but they're there. So my husband might be playing a trick on me.
My dishwasher's name is Tori, and he's really great at his job.
That's hilarious.
So what else? What about relationships? What could be causing some stressors here? I feel like part of it might be this latent anxiety that everybody is dealing with fewer resources anyway, so that's going to make us more short-tempered and everything. But Ben, you had your hand up. What were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, kind of related to that, one thing that I've been noticing kind of in my own life, I've been thinking about a lot, is just it feels like there's a lot more opportunities for miscommunication between partners or couples or roommates or literally anybody who's stuck together, because you're having so many more interactions with a person over a given time. And that, in addition to that, everybody's really stressed, everybody's juggling a lot of things cognitively. So while someone else may think that you're focused on what they're saying, you might be not paying as much attention to it as you should, or vice versa. You might be paying a lot of attention to it, and they might not be kind of focused on it as much. So I feel like there's a lot more opportunity for miscommunications to happen that can kind of create problems by themselves.
I think also expectations. So
Mhm.
because we're quarantined with maybe one or a few other people, we're expecting them to take on the burden of all of our needs, right? I need you to do this for me and this for me,
Right.
and I need you to be the world to me because you are the only person I can be with right now. And I think that that's a lot of pressure, and we're going to be let down by those expectations, and that could lead to conflict as well.
I
Yes.
noticed an article the other day also about how one of the most common reasons that couples are fighting, particularly couples who are like that sandwich generation where they have kids, but they also have older parents, or maybe they're caring for them or live near them, is this argument about social distancing and how and when and what to do to keep the older people safe. And
Yeah.
that's become a big issue for families, because this is something that they've never had to deal with before. And so they're having to create, new norms. And then, of course, those norms change when risks change. And that I think there can be a lot of disagreements within relationships regarding those kinds of boundaries.
Right. And then just the evaluation of risk between partners can
Right.
create some conflict, because I know my husband and I are both dealing with this kind of differently. Like we have different viewpoints on how we should handle some things, like whether we should Clorox our groceries or, like things like
Right.
that, where we just cope kind of differently. And we've been very fortunate in that we tend to have mental breakdowns at different times. So
That's
far,
perfect. Then you can
neither
be
one
there
of
for
us
each other.
yeah, so far we haven't created at the same time, so we've been able to support each other. But yeah, this sense of everybody kind of has their own individual way of dealing with the crisis that's happening right now. And what if your individual way of dealing with the crisis is not the same as your partner's? Then how do you do that?
How do you
manage
communicate that? How do you then assess what you need from them? How do you assess whether that's actually a reasonable expectation, like Chelsea said, and then actually ask for what you need? Or I would challenge you to also think about, for the things that the needs they can't fulfill, just like you would in a normal life, or I would encourage you to do in normal life, is reach out to others who might be able to fulfill that need for you. Because remember, our partners can't do that. And in fact, they don't normally do that, no matter what we think.
Right.
Even when it's not a pandemic. So we really can't be falling into that pattern now, or we're just, like Chelsea said, gonna get disappointed.
Right.
Going back to Cloroxing the groceries, I am a grocery Cloroxer and my husband is not.
Same.
But that's not a discussion that we've ever had before. So we did curbside pickup. We go to bring in the groceries and he put the groceries in the kitchen, and I almost had a heart attack because my plan was to Lysol them outside. So we wouldn't bring the germs inside. And so I blew up at him and he's like, I didn't know what the rules were. And I'm like, okay, well, now let's talk about the rules. our new norm for this experience will be to leave all the groceries outside. I will Clorox them, hand them to you, so we're bringing no germs in the house. And so after we took that time to lay the ground rules and get on the same page with those expectations, it went a lot more smoothly.
Well, I think that's a really key point there, because I was having a similar conversation with another group of friends. I don't know, some point in the past, all the days run together, but at some point in the recent past, I was having another conversation where someone asked me, do you think it's important to wipe down the groceries? And I said, you know what? I don't, but Brad does. And the fact that Brad thinks it's important means that I help him. When the groceries come, we wipe down the groceries together, because the point is that he feels more comfortable when we do, and I am willing to do something that makes him feel more comfortable. So I think that is a framework that we all should keep in mind when we're dealing with our partners. It's not just about, well, we should do this because I think it makes sense, or because, you know, I have evaluated this risk, but also to give your partners their own feelings as well. And sometimes it's about maintaining their health just as much as you know, as it being right, or evaluating the objectively evaluating the facts of the situation. And I'm sure there are ways that he does the same thing for me, where he will, I know for a fact there is, because I've bought so much yarn in the past few weeks, because I meditate by crocheting, and like every day, not every day, but a bunch of days, we get a new box of yarn. He's like, oh, well, is that more yarn? Yes, that is more yarn. So yeah, obviously he would not be buying this much yarn. But, you know, he does that because he knows that it's something that I need. And so I think, I feel like thinking about it in terms of meeting each other's needs is more important than thinking about it in terms of objectively evaluating this situation and what it calls for, you know.
Yeah.
I have a funny example if I can share. So last weekend before, I started to just get incredibly restless. And my restlessness was me looking through all these like Pinterest ideas for home design. And I was convinced that we needed a new couch. I said, babe, let's sell the couch. Let's get a new couch. We'll change up our living room. It'll be great. And I think I scared him because I was like showing him I was like, oh, look at all these changes we can make. And then I decided, okay, you know what? It doesn't make sense to do that. We're in an apartment. We're eventually going to move into a house, please. So let's just wait. Let's hold off on that. My couch isn't that old. It's still nice. I love it. So instead, I stripped off all of the pillow covers, all of the couch cushions, washed them. It took many loads to do this. Got them out of the washer, put them in the dryer, got them out of the dryer, defuzzed them, vacuumed the whole thing. Febreze, this is like a 2-day process of cleaning the couch. And I'm pretty sure he was just over there like, do I call someone? Like, what, is she okay? And he would ask me, he's like, are you okay?
So what was that for you? Did you just need some closure? Like, did you need to feel like it was refreshed and so you could move on?
Like a spring cleaning, or just like,
sure. Not that there has to be a reason right now. I just was wondering.
Curious. Well, yeah. And then
I've been thinking about all the ways to redo my space, right? How can I best utilize this? So yeah, all
Miley,
of that.
What were you going to say, Miley?
For me, so my husband has Addison's disease, which makes him more prone towards having the disease, getting COVID, and then like being really affected by it. And so for me, I've had to really think very hard and carefully about like what I'm doing, and being very cognizant that like if I go out to the grocery store or what have you, like I could potentially, even though I might not get sick, like the potential that he could get sick is really kind of weighs on my mind. And so like we've been trying to stretch all of our grocery runs as much as possible. So it's like, oh, can we make it 2 weeks without going to the grocery store and things like that, but just like having to think about all of that. And then, when you're in close proximity with your partner and you see them all the time, and then there's this added burden and there's these expectations, like, hey, can you please take care of the kid so I can get through this meeting or whatever? I think one of the things that we kind of forget about is to actually give appreciation, and like it be like telling your partner thank you for all the little things that they do, and And so I think for me, I've been trying to kind of ramp that part up, just because, we're in such close proximity of each other and seeing each other every day. And then we have a kid and kid's not sleeping and all that stuff, and just trying to make it a pleasant environment,
I
as
think
much as I can.
a really good thing to point out is to extend that gratitude, and even just think about gratitude, like think about the things that you're thankful for about your partner and everything. And the other thing that comes to mind is this when you talk about the close proximity and the continual proximity is the need for space, because like I am a person that needs my solo time. Like there's time I need to like get away, whereas my husband would happily be in my presence 24 hours a day. And I think there's this feeling that we interpret this need to be alone as I don't want to be around you because of you, and it's like, no, it's not because of you, it's because that's just me, that's the way I am. And so this need to be alone versus need to be together is not reflective of how committed I am to this relationship or how much I love you or anything like that. It's just we have these different needs, about being together. So I feel like all of this has been in context really of healthy relationships. We're talking about how we can serve each other's needs. But I do feel like it's important to acknowledge what we were talking about earlier, that this can be especially burdensome for unhealthy relationships, people who are going through the violence, domestic violence issues, and just people who have strife in their relationships. So I think this, like we talked about, this can be just this sense of exacerbating these problems that are already there, and having that latent stress can just cause us to have less resources to deal with those issues. So I think that's going to be an issue for some people as well.